So much in the news lately, the SARS team scanning the pyramid. There are new bits and pieces coming out about both the Khafre and the Khufu pyramids. I've been talking on the show about these megalithic sculptures and just how in the hell they were cut because they're monstrosities. They look fake to me, they look artificially cut to me. And there's so much more I've been wanting to touch base with. And it's time to bring back Chris Dunn on the program. It's been a couple of years that we've had him on the show. If you're not familiar with Chris Dunn, he is kind of the godfather of the whole machine movement, the advanced science, the advanced machining in ancient Egypt. Wrote three books. One, the most famous that I would think of, the most well researched and referenced, is the lost technologies of ancient Egypt. He also wrote a book called the Giza Power Plant. His most recent book is Giza, the Tesla connection, and that's came out a couple of years ago. So, Chris, good to see you. Welcome back to Earth Ancients. How you doing?
I'm doing okay, Cliff. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I got you on the show. I'm going to be able to work you over a little bit, ask you those.
Yeah, go ahead. You won't be the first.
Yeah, but I'm a friendly face. I'm totally on your side and totally believe what you have written is the real McCoy. And I'm curious on your take on this SARS, the synthetic aperture radar scan that the team in Italy put together. We had all of them on the show a few months ago. Filippo Biondi and Armando May, Corianda, Malanga was also, no, he was not on the show. He doesn't speak English. So we had two out of the three. But I'm curious, when you see these scans, Chris, and they're purported to go deep, deep under the ground, what's your feeling on that?
Well, I actually went through different phases of feelings about it, right? My first was, oh no, that can't be right. And the one thing that really put me off the first time was the the CAD drawings that were extracted out of the raw data. And I didn't quite understand how they could extract such clean CAD drawings out of it. I mean, but I'm not the expert. And as I said, I wrote. People were pushing me and saying, "You need to talk. People want to know what you think about this because this has the potential to really support your theory on the Great Pyramid or the other pyramids." And I was like, well, okay, I'll respond. And so I responded and posted on Facebook, and I also have that on my website, gizapower.com. But the my response was essentially non-committal at first. I was like, I'm not an expert. I'm not qualified to say whether this is right or wrong. I know that there are elements here that overlap with what I have written. And one particular was going back to my third book, Giza, the Tesla Connection, and I'm examining the work of John Cadman and the pump, the generator, being in the subterranean chamber under the Great Pyramid, and not finding an outlet for that, I resorted to my original idea in the Giza Power Plant that perhaps it was some kind of Tesla earthquake machine, an oscillator that caused the vibrations to be forced into the pyramid and also into the. But then I commented that with with the knowledge that the Giza Plateau is riddled with shafts and tunnels, and it seems that the possibility is that there is what I call the big daddy of pulse generators is actually under the Giza Plateau, deep under the Giza Plateau. So that's what I wrote at the time. And these shafts seem to kind of lean towards support for what I had written in Giza the Tesla connection, though I was still conservative in my response. And I just said, well, I think that just the raw data, we'll just look at the raw scans, that is sufficient to me to warrant further exploration and hopefully, be able to physically access that site. And I think now that there is a movement happening in Egypt where they're going to start cleaning out one of the shafts on the Giza Plateau. And
Mm.
so hopefully, by the time you and I are there next year, you in April, me in March, they may have found something. But since then, very interesting development. I got a call from, Manu Seyfedeh. Have you talked
Yeah,
to?
sure.
Yeah.
Manu's been on the show. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy. So he calls me up and he said, "Hey, I have been working on this SAR scans, and I think you need to take a closer look at this because there is a correlation between the Giza Power Plant and the size of these shafts." Okay. And so he went through it with me. And basically, what we have is a shaft column going down deep into
Mm.
it's about 648 meters deep.
Is this the Khafre or the Khufu pyramid?
Well, it's Khafre,
Right.
right? But there's also we have the same thing under the Great Pyramid,
Mm.
Khufu's pyramid. Now, and I think the same depth, the same diameter columns exist under that one too. So what? Okay, so what is significant about it? If you look at the columns going deep into you have a like an organ pipe, okay, and the organ pipe has a particular fundamental frequency, and that fundamental frequency is a harmonic of the frequency of the ascending passage in the Great Pyramid. And so those two actually coupling together and functioning is kind of like, a musical instrument where you have all these different parts that are playing, and it gets really loud really quickly. But the significance of why it's that deep is what is really important to me. And it's not necessarily so much that, yes, the harmonics is one thing. Yes, to have features that served as a pulse generator underneath the pyramids, that kind of supports the whole concept of the Giza power plant. But the fact that they reach through the sedimentary layer of limestone and then into the igneous rock, probably another 200 meters into the igneous rock, which is remarkable,
Yeah.
a remarkable feat of engineering for one thing. But when you consider what else the ancient Egyptians did, to find something like this is mildly surprising when you consider what's on top, right?
Right.
The Great Pyramid, the pyramids themselves. But we're used to those, right? It's like there's no surprise here. Yeah, they've been there forever. Now we've got these huge shafts reaching down into the earth. So what's so significant about them being embedded in the igneous rock? Well, we go to Friedman and Freund's research on earthquake lights and the underlying physics behind earthquake lights. And basically what he proposes that igneous rock, the minerals in igneous rock, have these peroxide defaults that create positive charge carriers that if they're stressed, then those P holes or positive charge carriers will shoot to the surface
Mm.
and they'll ionize in the air and create earthquake lights. So essentially what he's done is point the way to a source of electrons right under our feet. And he actually states that the Earth is just a huge battery. It's a potential battery. All you need to
Yeah.
do is stress the rock, and you've got a source of electricity. And the ancient Egyptians, and now I'm convinced the ancient Egyptians were tapping into that physics that Freud described. But Freud didn't just speculate. He didn't just, put out a theory on paper in terms of, working the math and the physics. He did laboratory experiments on different rocks. And he took a granite beam and put it in a hydraulic press and pressed down on one end, and electrons flowed from one end to the other when it was under pressure. So he essentially proved out his theory. So now you're asking the question, why are those shafts going so deep? Because they're actually going where the source of the electricity is to stimulate it, rather than driving a pulse through hundreds of meters of limestone in order for it to tickle the granite, so to speak. It would be
Yeah.
just a tickle. They don't want to just tickle the granite or the igneous rock. They want to hammer it real hard.
Yeah, but when you look at the renderings, though, I mean, I think in I see two shafts and there's staircases around the outer perimeter of these shafts, and I'm like, is that taking license and creating those, or do you think they actually have staircases that go all the way down to the bottom of this thing? Because there's two, and then there's two big rooms at the very bottom, and you're looking at a scan, a SAR scan, and of course it's the operator who's rendering this in 3D according to some pattern. I mean, how accurate do
Yeah.
you think that is?
Yeah, I don't know. You see, that's it. I'm all about getting physical measurements, rather
Yeah,
than taking that data from like a point cloud. I mean, you take a point cloud like the point cloud of the scan pyramid mission, where they did the muography.
right,
They detected that large void above the Grand Gallery. I
right.
mean, that is very, very low resolution, very rough. I mean, you couldn't really define what kind of shape is there. We just know that there is a void. They can't even tell if it's on an angle or not. So, I think it does require having physical access to inspect it before being sure of what you got. But you
Yeah.
mentioned the spirals, and I was puzzled by that too. And basically, I opened up a chat with AI and started feeding information into AI. And this is what Manu Seyfedeh had been doing, right? He had opened up a chat with AI and he was inquiring about all these features and putting them together.
Yeah.
And AI was like really confirming the whole relationship between what is under the pyramids and the pyramids themselves. So I opened up a chat with AI and started to inquire about the purpose of spirals. And I should qualify before I continue on that along that thought. I was at a conference in Chicago with Filippo Biondi and Amanda May and Trevor, let's see, in September. And it was actually sitting down with them and talking to them and actually receiving more information from Filippo and examining more closely his scans, that I became convinced that what he had was correct
Hmm.
or close to correct. I mean, I don't know what you would call precise in terms of measurements. If he's within an inch, I would say that would be pretty precise. But the as far as the spirals go, and what I saw, what he showed me, yeah, I became a believer totally. And it's like right now, I can't. It's like I can't imagine the I can't imagine the system. I'm calling this the whole system. It's not just the Great Pyramid. It's Khafre's pyramid, Menkaure, all the way down to the Sphinx has got one, right? But I can't imagine the system functioning without these shafts now, without these columns.
So it proves your theory of energy production is what you're suggesting. Is that these I just call them entrails because that's what they look like to me. Even though they're shafts, it's more like, they're part of this machinery
Right.
that is being defined in these, not only your theories, but also in these scans. Did you have a chance to look at the Khufu scans of 2022 and the 3D rendering of all the shafts and rooms and
Yeah, I kind of tuned that one out because it was really too good. It's
yeah.
like and too radically different from what we knew about. And then also knowing that they had the muography scanning going on
Right.
before then, with nothing like that being detected. That kind of raised a bit of a red flag for me.
Hmm.
Now I am like, I'm not totally against it, but I would await further proof really before saying all of that, that precise geometry is correct.
Yeah. Interesting.
It'd be hard to say, yeah, to say that right now. I can say that right now. And similarly, I mean, he's also detected like five king's chamber complexes inside Khafre's pyramid,
That's another one.
the
Yeah.
multi-tiered granite beams above
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And that was surprising to me. And I was like, whoa, you consider that information is a shock to my system.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what a shock it is to Zahi Hawaii?
Well, he doesn't acknowledge anything. He diffuse says it's hogwash. I mean, that's his. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I mean, that's his usual go-to,
Yeah.
and has been, you know,
Forever.
forever. So I don't know him to be any different. So
Yeah.
he was that way with the carbon 14. He was that way with the scan pyramid mission. He's that way with the SAR scans. So,
I think he embarrassed himself on the Joe Rogan program when he said he questioned what is a Zep Tepe. He didn't know what that was, and he didn't know what Gobekli Tepe was, and I think people were shocked that he was so. I don't know if he forgot or he just it wasn't part of his vernacular. When we
I don't
look,
know. I think he knew what Gobekli Tepe was. I mean, I thought that he had commented on that way back when it was first discovered, but well, he and I are about the same age, so I can forgive a certain amount of forgetfulness.
yeah, I one thing, and then we're going to move on. One thing about the SARS technology that I didn't realize, and I was shocked. I had a retired special ops serviceman call, or not call me, he emailed me and said that that the military was using these scans and had been for decades.
Yes, yeah. I mean, and Filippo had been using them on various installations around the world. So,
Yeah.
and in Italy. So it's not like he was an amateur, he didn't know what he was doing, or that the technology had not been qualified.
Well, I mean, it must be under top secret level types of usage. No one really knows about it, and we maybe SARS exposed the military's use of it.
I don't know. Well, it certainly exploded across the planet like a wildfire, didn't it?
Totally amazing.
Talk about a feeding frenzy.
Talk real quickly about what you think the future holds for the SARS scan. I don't see the Antiquities Department spending a lot of time looking for shafts in new rooms and deep under. They don't have the technology to start digging, it feels like they wouldn't allow that to happen. But what do you think the future holds for the analysis that the SARS scans presents?
Yeah, I think it's going to take a long time,
That's what I thought.
because I think you have the technology, the science, and then you have the politics. And so, sometimes the dealing with the science and the math is the easiest part, but the politics is a little more tender and sensitive. So I would say over time, I mean, there are young Egyptologists coming up. There are young engineers who are now studying the antiquities with the same kind of perspective that you and I have on them.
Hmm.
And I mean, our friend Mohammed has been carrying the torch now for quite a few years and does a great job.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, yeah, there's a groundswell of interest in Egypt and throughout the Arabic world on the heritage of that area of the world,
Mhm.
because they're now waking up to the fact that their history needs to be rewritten,
Yeah.
not by Westerners this time.
Yeah. So you're probably have prophesized correctly, Chris, when you're saying that is probably going to be 50 or a couple of generations away from really digging in deep and getting the permissions, which is what has to happen to
Right.
dig underneath the Giza Plateau.
Right. Well, it's not going to be in my lifetime, I don't think. The when I look at I look at it from a kind of like a 10,000 foot view. It's I came along and published Advanced Machining in Ancient Egypt 100 years after William Flinders Petrie published Pyramids and Temples of Giza.
Let's hope it's not going to be 100 years.
So,
God,
so it could be 100 years, my friend.
no, I don't want to hear that. I'm hoping that we
No,
wake up.
no, no, no. I think that, the cats, Flinders Petrie was definitely constrained in his writing. I mean, for obvious reasons. I mean,
Yeah,
the culture at that time and it wouldn't have allowed him to have the same kind of freedom that I have had to publish my thoughts.
right.
In fact, the Giza Power Plant barely got published. If it wasn't for Barbara Hand Clow, who believed in it, it wouldn't have been published because everybody at Bear and Company were going, "You got to be crazy publishing this book."
So glad that she did. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I interviewed a Egyptologist about 2 years ago. Her name is Kara Cooney. She is a professor at UCLA down in Southern California. She wrote a book called Recycling for Dead. And what was as absolutely fascinating about this book is that Egyptologists have begun to understand that recycling and repurposing and reusing temples, death masks, entire burial sites, it was the norm during the Pharaonic period, Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, Late Kingdom. And one of the things that I didn't realize is that they also understood that Ramses II, who was known as the great usurper, who was constantly reusing things, wasn't the only one who was reusing pyramids and statuary and other items for their dynasties. And the point I'm trying to make here is that these guys, I'm really beginning to think, and I want your opinion about that, that they weren't so great after all. They didn't have the brilliant engineers and scientists and whatever. They inherited it, a great deal of it. We'll talk about the statuary in a minute, but I'm curious, after you've written your books, do we have a better sense of the pre-dynastic people? Do we have a better sense of, I mean, you show us how brilliant they were in constructing the pyramids and making them generators, but have you come any closer to an understanding of just who these people were? We know their science base is on Earth energies, but I mean, these guys are completely unique. They're nothing close to who we are today or who the pharaohs in the pharaonic period was, right?
Well, yeah, that's hard to say. I mean, when you look back 60, 70 years, you see the culture and the way it was functioning then. If you presented them with a view into the future where we're living and how we're operating, what we look like, and
Yeah,
walking around with our cell phones, and it will be foreign to them, right? It'd be, who are these people? Who are these people? And yeah, and looking back, into the 40s and 50s, it's a totally different culture. But to your point, I've always been pretty much on solid ground in terms of my thinking on who these people were. And while it's hard to know what any individual is thinking, what their belief systems or, what they're carrying around in their head most of the day, though these days, sadly, we find out what's on their minds if we log into X or Facebook, but that's another matter, right? But
right.
the but the issue for me is not necessarily, what their religion was or what they believed in about the afterlife. But there's one aspect of their thinking is very, very clear. They were thinking like engineers, and
Mm.
they were working with three-dimensional materials, shaping them to a high level of precision, and that requires certain skills and tools in order to accomplish that.
Hmm.
So at least we know that it's unambiguous, regardless of what an archaeologist might tell you. It's unambiguous the fact that they had access to sophisticated machinery. And, the question is to what level, if we compare machines today to the machines that I was operating 60 years ago, then there's a big difference, because of the advances in computer science and computer numerical control machines and stuff like that. We didn't have anything back then. So I know today that's very popular to say, well, take for instance the vases, the pre-dynastic vases that show this remarkable accuracy and precision and geometry. You have modern machinists whose only concept of doing any work similar to that would be a CNC machine. And so you'll read people who are arguing, no, it had to be CNC. You couldn't do that manually. But I was a manual machinist for many years. In fact, I was a journeyman lathe turner, and I made parts that you would run on a CNC machine today, but back when I was working in the shops, it was like we used three-dimensional profiling equipment that worked off of models or templates, and those were Keller machines and true trace, hydraulic tracing equipment, and even manual tracing equipment. So, as far as the culture in terms of what did these engineers do when they went home, right? After they had did they have access to? And we can only leave that to our imagination, because I think most of the material goods that have not survived over the millennia, we are talking
Yeah.
millennia going back thousands and thousands of years. And so archaeologists are now studying the remains of more recent settlements, I think. And
Which
they're
is
not.
kind of boring if you ask me. It's like digging up wooden coffins. This is big. This is Zahi Hawas's big claim to fame is publishing Saqqara coffin and the wood paintings. It's so boring to me.
Well, I could not be an archaeologist. I don't have the patience to do that. The and it's not as it's ambiguous, and I think, and it's open to interpretation. In fact, I was reading an article about the Pompeii and the analysis of Pompeii and the plaster forms where they went in and they filled these cavities and then relieved them, and it shows how the people
Oh, how the people died during the earthquake or the
yeah,
volcanic
it shows
eruption.
the
Yeah,
volcanic eruption, right?
right.
I found it fascinating in that the narrator was talking about how using AI to interpret the evidence re revealed a more accurate result, because they didn't have that human kind of prejudice, or somebody who
Oh,
has
good point. Yeah.
been taught one way and is going to interpret something along those lines, and it's a little more nuanced, and AI is looking at a wider database, is pulling things in and crunching numbers and coming up with a more accurate picture. And so, I think with the use of AI like that, such as, I mean, I think Pompeii is a prime example of where it would be beneficial.
Yeah, I
And
like.
so
Yeah.
there's two people I know, or three people I know who are using, well, four now, but we got Filippo Biondi, he's using AI. My new Safe for Day is using AI. I'm using it a little bit. And there's a guy, Austin Moore, who is an engineer in Detroit, who has created a paper because he was querying the functionality of the Giza Power Plant using AI. And so yeah, it does kind of take the emotions out of it
Yeah.
and the prejudices out of it. So, I think you were shocked when I mentioned 100 years into the future. 100 years since Petrie, and we're going to go 100 years. The way things are going right now, I think it's going to be a hell of a lot faster than that.
Yeah,
Because
I
things
hope
are
so.
things are changing so fast. So I can't keep up.
Yeah. It's funny because one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about the previous civilization, the pre-dynastics or pre-Egyptians, I don't know if we can even call them Egyptians. It's in Egypt, but if these early people came from another part of the world, who knows what we call them. But when I was in Memphis, Egypt, 2 years ago, Muhammad took us to an outdoor museum that had this Ramses sculpture laying on its back. And it was 35, almost, I think, 40 feet tall. It had been found previously half buried, but it was such a work of brilliance, Chris. And from my eye, there's no way in hell it was carved by hand. And in your book on lost technologies, you describe how to determine hand, and this is what I want to get to, hand carved versus machine carved sculptures. This thing not only was elegantly carved, it was beautiful, but it was not carved by, and I'm an artist, I'm a trained illustrator, and I could tell there wasn't anything that was a human touch, a chisel or perhaps some kind of electric chisel. But what makes it fascinating and why there's so much confusion on these Ramses sculptures is that the guy sticks his cartouche on it, puts his signature on it, and the Egyptologist, not looking at the actual form of the sculpture, they accept the fact, or they think it's a fact, that this was carved during Ramses' period. Talk a little bit about why precision sculptural work is machined over hand carved.
You started right at the genesis of my work on the Ramses statue.
Yeah, let me just stop you real quickly. Talk about you. I think you were at the Ramseum in Luxor when you saw that one Ramses head, and that was kind of like something's off here. You're kind of going something's off here. I gotta look a little closer.
Yeah, no, it was actually the first time I went to Egypt, and I went to the Memphis
Oh, you saw that one. Okay.
museum, right?
Yeah.
And so I wasn't interested in temples or statues or anything like that. I was just interested in mechanical engineering stuff, right? But I was looking down the length of the this statue that you're referring to, and indeed, it's a beautifully carved statue, gorgeous statue. And the one thing that I noticed that struck me was the symmetry. Right away, I
Yes.
noticed symmetry, and that is it was the nostrils. They seem to be perfect. I was like, no normal person has, identical nostrils, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I've noticed, and I put that in my memory banks and just moved on, right? That was nice. But then, to your point, actually trying to determine whether something has been machined or been hand tooled, for me, it is about geometry and precision. And so when you consider that there are different ways to create a three-dimensional object, like if you're a sculptor, you may draw an outline on a piece of rock and then start chiseling away until you reach your final form. And then, if you want to create some symmetry, you may use a pointer from one side to another. But to within what accuracy? That is the question. What precision? And so my first attempt at determining symmetry and precision in Egypt was not on the statue, not on the face of the statue, but on the crowns. And the white crown of Upper Egypt, which is it's like an ellipsoid shape,
Is that
like
the
a
head
bubble.
jet? Do they call it the head jet?
Yeah, the head jet, right. And it kind of leans back like a bowling pin. It's got a top knot on it, but it's like a beautifully curved ellipse, right?
Right.
And so they were when I first went to the Luxor temple, it was in 2004, and I was noticing these white crowns at the feet of the Ramses statues, the walking statues in the Ramses Hall. Everybody was off chatting about the hieroglyphs on the wall and the reliefs on the wall, and I was running my hands over the surface of this granite, and it's like, wow, that's smooth. No, there's no wrinkles, no. Yeah, it's like that's really fine workmanship, and that stayed with me until 2006, and I went over in February of 2006 with John Anthony West. And so we were in again in the Ramses Hall, and he's talking about Schwaller de Lubic's, and I wanted to learn about de Lubic's, but then my attention was drawn back to the crowns, and I had a digital camera with me that time, so I took the
Right.
photographs, and I had my computer too with my graphics software. I was capable of manipulating, the images so that I could compare one side to the other to see if they were symmetrical. And so that was the first time that I actually did the reverse transparency comparison, right? And came up with just like a perfect match on the crowns. I mean, it was just, and that all those are in my book and on my website. If people want to go to my website and look up look at the photographs I have up there. So that was the start. It's kind of like, like you're peeling off layers of an onion. You go down one layer, and then it's kind of like, well, okay, I've done this. I wonder what's going to happen if I do this. And so after photographing the crowns, then I was like, well, okay, odds against odds. I've got to do the face. I've got to do the heads, right? And so they had this bust of Ramses out front next to the obelisk. And unfortunately, they mounted that bust on top of a body. Now it's a part of
Yeah.
the standing statue nearby. But
You were lucky to see it down at the eye level too, weren't you?
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. It was right there in front of me. I mean, you could go up and touch it, and you did. But anyway, so I took a couple of photographs of that and took that into my laptop, and I'm going, wow, okay. So I had a situation where I could line up the jawline. So you got to remember now, you've got I'm looking at a 2D image of a three-dimensional object, right? And so the jawline is coming down, it's moving in 3 dimensions. So, and it's showing that it matches from both sides, right?
Mm.
And I was going, okay, that's remarkable. Now, to what accuracy? That is another question. Is it within 10,000ths of an inch, 5,000ths of an inch? I don't know. But then there was another aspect to it, another feature, which was the nose. And the nose was slightly off center. So, my camera was evidently just rotated just a little bit so that I didn't get the nose directly centered between the jaw. And so I did more of when you're on tour, as you know,
Yeah.
you're in and then you're off, and then you're on the bus or you're on the plane or you're going somewhere, right? And it's all great fun. But the real work came when I got home and I started examining those photographs at home at my leisure and doing a deep dive on them. And then I was like, crap, I've got to go back to Egypt.
So you
And
got
just
into it so heavy that you needed to have confirmation of your theories.
Right. I mean, I said I need to go back. I need to have a good tripod. I need to be able to photograph things. And so I went to my boss and I said, "Hey, I need to go back to Egypt." And he's like, "Why? You just got back. Why are you going back there?" I left something. What do you leave? I'll bring my laptop in tomorrow and I'll show you. So the next day I brought my laptop in and I was showing him the what I had, the not quite perfect image of Ramses and what I was analyzing it, and his eyes open and he goes, "Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. All right. So put in for your time." And then the following day he comes in, "Are you going alone?" He says, "This is Judd Pack." He was the CEO of the company. He said, "Are you going over there alone?" I said, "Yeah, I was planning on it." He said, "Oh, well, can I carry your tripod?"
You never told me your boss went with you.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he was the CEO of Danville Metal Stamping and still is. So is like really keen on going over and actually being a part of it. And so we
Mhm.
went back in May, and I spent like I don't know 6 hours inside Luxor Temple and multi a couple of days in the Dendera Temple because that's another amazing place. But the work in the Luxor Temple was, I think, very significant, and I think, like you said, I don't think it has been given enough attention. That may be because of some misinformation that has been put out. Because you got my book and you got the information from my book. Most of the knowledge of the symmetry of Ramses that has been presented by other people on the internet, on YouTube videos, and they don't have the full, and including myself, without accessing the source material and knowing, the methods and the observations of the author or the person who has made this discovery, then you may come to the wrong conclusion. And so that wrong conclusion was that I had lied. I was dishonest in not pointing out the lack of symmetry in parts of the statue. And so it was kind of like, wait a minute, I did. It's in my book.
Yeah.
And so, but when you get these people who, for some reason, there have been a few out there that have really taken a dislike to me and my work and have been actively talking against it.
Yeah. Well, they must be threatened though, Chris. They must be threatened by your clarity that there was an advanced science behind the cutting of these statues. Because if we talk about the Ramsey II at Memphis, that 82-ton statue was cut out of a block that was probably 150 or 200 ton, and it was done with such level of precision that no one pays attention to it. They just think it's a beautiful statue, but they're not looking closer. Talk about the precision aspect and why that is so important. And if you want to give the Ramsey 2 head that you saw at Luxor as a example, go ahead.
Yes, well, the essentially, from my background in manufacturing, I'm fully familiar with three-dimensional machining of products such as, parts for car bodies or,
Yeah,
airplane parts, aircraft engines, where you are machining dies over which metal will be stretched and formed and stuff like that.
right.
And so those dies have to be precise. When you have a die that has symmetrical parts to it, you would program just one half and then mirror it to create the other half and then stitch those together to give you a complete shape. And so all of this was in my background in terms of how I look at product. And if you consider that I was looking at the Ramses statue as a product. And so it's just like you're looking at the vases that are precise to within 2,000ths of an inch, or you're looking at the boxes in the Serapeum and the surfaces that are flat with, some parts of the boxes not so flat, but majority of the surfaces are very flat and square. And so you have all of these products, different products, right, that are displaying that underlying knowledge and craftsmanship, and it's being applied in different ways, right?
Mhm.
So it's not a fluke, it's not a one-off, it's not a coincidence, which, a lot of people would like to say, oh, well, they just got lucky. No such thing as luck here. I mean, this is a tightly controlled discipline. It's like manufactured items are tightly controlled. We have standards that we have to hold, and we have a measurement system that we use. And so it's obvious in in their artifacts that they had to have had the same thing. So when I think of precision, for me, it's the photographs are basically a bell, right? Okay, I'm ringing a bell here. This needs to receive a little more attention.
Mhm.
And basically, it appears to be very symmetrical and very precise. So the next step would be to give it some metrological inspection using state-of-the-art tools like laser scanners and CMM kind of machines, things like that. And then to do some analysis in the computer, the same thing I did, except in 3D software, which will reveal not just the outline of the jaw, but the whole surface of the cheeks and the face, and then compare one side to the next to see how much variation you get between the two. So that's when you would say, okay, yeah, this had to have been machined because the human hand is not capable of holding that kind of precision, such as like the pre-dynastic vases. You can't make one of those by hand and achieve the same kind of precision. It's just impossible to do.
Right.
So anyway, that's basically it. And I don't know if we're in stage 1, 2, or 3 right now. We're in the book has been out since 2010. It's now 2025, so 15 years.
Yeah.
And it is getting more attention, and a lot of the controversies are dropping away. I'm trying to respond to the critics in a way that I'm not arguing with them or arguing past them on the internet, but to publish something that is that a reasonable person could understand.
Yeah.
The other part is that I'm a serious researcher and I have written a book. And when you tell somebody that there is a more detailed response to your questions in my book, they get upset because you're telling them, read my book. It's kind of like all the criticism that Hawass received on Joe Rogan when he said it's in my book.
Yeah, exactly. Totally weird.
It's in my book. So that seems
Yeah.
to be a negative these days for people who don't like to read books.
Yeah.
They prefer to get their information on YouTube.
So at this point, after years of the book's been out and you've had a chance to sit and maybe ruminate on this whole thing, do you think that they had something like a software application that was was attached to some kind of cutting device that would create such perfection? Do you have any sense that you could grasp onto without, I mean, it's all obviously it's all theory, but when you look at these Ramsey 2 faces that are so perfectly cut and with such symmetry and such elegance, there's a human element to it, but then when you look at the actual cutting, there's no human hands involved. It's all some kind of machine.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if I was to say how far back would we go in our civilization or development of technology. If you start back in the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s, 1700s, we didn't have the capability to make those statues,
Yeah.
you know? And so then moving forward with a combination of mechanical templates, models to trace from, does that bring it into range? I don't know. I think even if what you had was just mechanical machines, I don't think I wouldn't attempt it, you know.
Yeah.
And and so we are moving forward to an era where the guidance of machine tools is programmed into the machine rather than so that a human has no kind of interaction except just to set it up and start the machine, let it run.
Do you have any sense of that though, Chris? Do you think like when I look at this Ramsey head and the beauty and the precision of the nostrils and the eye and the ear and the mouth, and you talk a lot about the mouth in your book, is it like somebody said, okay, here's a block of granite, red granite. I'm gonna place it in this machine. I'm gonna press a button and I'm not gonna see it until it's done. Is that the sense you get out of that? Or is
Kind
it
of. Yeah.
really? That's pretty amazing then. So it's like I think
Well,
years ago you
you know,
used the term like garden variety sculpture. It's like it's made for the garden, you know. There's no human element in there at all except for
the Ramses though, if you look at the Ramses face, it's consistent. You recognize that face wherever you see it, and it has the same characteristics. So, it's kind of like they had a template, some kind of template, whether it was a physical template or electronic template, but they were basically replicating that same shape over and over again because they already had the program and anybody could run it, right?
yeah, but now that you say that, did Ramsey
Well,
put
think of it this way, though. Think of it this way. These are the people that built the pyramids and dug them holes deep into the earth, right? I mean, they were doing some pretty amazing shit back then. And
exactly?
right? It's kind of like we are living with all of these modern things all around us and looking into the past, and we're seeing a civilization that already determined that coal wasn't the answer, that they
Exactly.
were just going to grab the electrons from under their feet.
Way ahead of us. No,
They
but I
were
mean,
so far ahead of us,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But it even makes less sense that Ramsey would put his cartouche on anything that looks like that. We now define that look, that face, that lips, the nose, the ears, the eyes of the sculpture that we claim is Ramses II. It could be the pre-dynastics version of man. This represents man, and the Egyptologists not having anything to go on and Ramses cartouche on everything, they claim that this is Ramses. It's not Ramses, is it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they definitely did some work, did some adjustments to the face. They exaggerated the smile, right? So
Yeah,
the mouth is upturned like this.
right.
And the reason for that is because this statue is what, 20 feet tall, looking down.
Huge.
And if it had a normal mouth, which is basically straight across, right, it would look downturned. That mouth would look downturned. You wouldn't get the smile if you were looking up at it from below. And so they have these optical trickery, that's optical trickery on the face. Also, the engineering that went into the design of the statues, where they strengthened the head by giving it a beard or a gusset from here down to here, and then they have the headdress strengthening attached to the shoulders.
Right.
The elbows were attached to the thighs, which is an unnatural condition for a human. So yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of different features on those statues. Plus, there's there are these mistakes, you know. You can still look when you look really, really closely. You can see the tool marks on the statues. The statue, the one in the British Museum, which came from the Ramesseum, it's got a an error where they dug too deep in the mouth, right, the corner of the mouth. And so all of these, and that is kind of like an indication of a machine. The workpiece had shifted somewhat, you know, there's an error. And so they tried to machine out the error by cutting the lips deeper. Right. And so there's a
Yeah.
shock right at the vermilion border where they cut the lips deeper. So they, you know, I mean, they were using standard machining practices when they machined those faces. They were using a larger tool to cut the open areas, and then they switched tools to a more, you know, finer point to cut the fine detailing in it.
Do you think that the use of microscopic lenses to look really deep into these cuts would determine the cutting tool?
You mean as far as whether they were using what kind of a medium that they were using, like diamond or something of that nature?
Yeah, or if
Yeah.
you can tell if it's even laser cut, which would be really a mind
I
blower.
generally avoid lasers because I was like I worked with lasers for about 13 years, and they're very limited in the work that they can do. And so, and also they're not cheap to run. It's not a very cost-effective way to remove material. I compare that to a regular machining, even vibratory machining, if you're using like a ultrasonic machining or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
That would be a little more efficient than using laser. Lasers was the magical tool that just was just looking for a place to happen. I read that in a trade magazine many years ago. I was fascinated with lasers, though. I mean, I just loved them. And I got involved with them at a company in Indianapolis and ran a laser job shop for a
Mhm.
while. But it's a thermal process. So lasers is a thermal process. You know, you may ablate the material, but you can't really cut cleanly with it. There's
Because
always
it's too hot and you can't control the heat levels.
right. I mean, you can control the heat levels, but the finishes that you get, you're not going to get the same finishes that you would
Oh,
get
right.
on the
Yeah.
that you see on the statues or in these other artifacts. So I would just dismiss laser out of hand. I'd be like, no, no way. There was a guy who came in, he wanted to know if he was having trouble with his blades. He had a company that made English muffins, and he put raisins in the muffins, right? And so he was having a problem with cutting these muffins because the blade kept dragging on the raisins, and it was tearing up the muffins. And so he brought in a box of muffins. Yeah, wanted to know if I could laser them. It was like,
Oh my God.
I was like, I think that's the wrong application, Omar. And he said,
Yeah.
well, try it anyway. So I had to try it. And so basically, I put it in the cabinet, set up the machine, and let it run, and then opened up the cabinet and took out a toasted muffin.
Jesus, that's funny. Kind of a weird use for that high-tech machinery. So, in concluding on the cutting side, your feeling is that it was some either vibrating tool or high revolution blade of some kind that was cutting this granite.
Well, I mean, not necessarily high revolution. You know, there's basically the biggest thing to watch or principle that you have to be aware of in any kind of machining is heat, because heat will degrade your cutting tool. And basically, it's a matter of the kind of action that you're imparting on the tool, whether it's rotary or reciprocal,
Hmm.
right? So if it's a rotary, you don't want, depending on the diameter that you're rotating, you don't want to have too high a revolution because you're going to burn up the tool with granite. I'm talking with granite now, not limestone. So I mean, there is, you know, it's kind of like the Petrie core number 7, which had those spiral grooves around it.
Right.
the feed rate is 500 times greater than a regular diamond drill. At least it was in 1984 when I did my research on it. I mean, the improvement in tools, they may be doing it a lot faster now or a lot greater now. But a lot of people have interpreted that to mean that the tool was spinning 500 times faster, which is not what I meant. So yeah, that there's can be some confusion. Some of the confusion I take credit for. Others, I people can be confused for all kinds of reasons. Nothing to do with what I said or did, right?
Gotcha. Gotcha. Let's finish up with these. I call them the Saqqara vases, dishes, plates. I actually was in the pyramid there at Saqqara, and Muhammad introduced me to a local archaeologist, and he sold me a part of a vase, not as good as Mark Young or Bell's vases, but it was
Yeah.
enough. It was enough to get a sense of just how they cut these things. Talk about the your son Alex and Mark Young's research on these stone bowls.
Adam Young?
Oh, Adam Young, excuse me. Adam Young,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Alex was on my tour in 2018, and Adam was on that tour, and so they met at that point. And Alex offered to do a lab inspection on his vases. He's discussing his vases. And of course, the question has always been, oh, look how precise those vases are. I wonder how precise they really are.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, myself, I go into, the number of times I've been to Egypt. I mean, there have been times when going into the Cairo Museum, you couldn't even take a photograph. You had to leave your camera outside,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah. And so there's certainly no chance for me to get one of those vases.
Yeah.
But anyway, but Alex, yeah, Adam came to Indianapolis. I was up there, and it was at a company, a military contractor I was working on as a quality engineer. And they put one of these vases, I think it was the OG, what they call the OG, the original granite vase. I put it up on a rotary table and inspected it with using conventional inspection equipment, dial indicators, and it kind of blew me away. I was shocked by what I saw. It was within 2,000ths of an inch of being precise
Yeah.
in some areas. And so that was the first indication that, hey, I think we've got something here. Adam then, with Alex, Adam actually went to Capture 3D, I think in Connecticut, and had them scan it, 3D scan it, and got the point cloud. He sent that to Alex. Alex and his friend Nick Sierra, they both work at Rolls-Royce now. They took that data and created a STL file, which is a file that you can create CNC code with.
Mhm.
Basically, it takes a whole bunch of points and then renders it down to a file that
Is that
a
the
CAD.
3D file that you can manipulate on your computer
Right.
screen?
You can basically apply a toolpath to it, and model it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what they did. And they were sitting on it for quite a while, not knowing what steps to take next.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, yeah, what do we do here now? And then Alex, he's like, I think maybe Ben Van Kerkwyk would be a good guy to put this information out. And so
Yeah.
he and Adam decided that they would do that and went over to Ben, and Ben ran with it. And so that's how it got out into the public square
Yeah.
very efficiently.
Talk a little bit about the last bit of data on this, because Kirkwood's now kind of considering them less utility, home use, and possible function of a machine of some kind. These what we think are vases and plates and things, because of the precision, they may be used as some form of application on a technology, an engine or something. I don't know. But is that your feeling as well, or are you Do you feel that it's simply
Yeah, I
just,
mean, I love exotic ideas and I love to speculate, right? And certainly I've come up with a few myself, but it's just speculation. And in generally I try to follow the rules of Occam's razor, right? Like, so where the all else consider the simplest solution is probably the correct one. So there's no way, I don't think, maybe eventually there will be, but I don't think there's any way to support that idea at this time or to give it more strength than the simple, well, it was just a nice little item to put on your shelf, right?
yeah,
Uh, or it was something that we gave apprentices to, before they graduated because they had to do some fairly significant work. And so that's pretty much it. I mean, in terms of taking the research further. And that research is continuing. I mean, that's the good thing about it is that Adam and Matt continue to work hard, forwarding, their pursuing their investigation further. I think Adam and an associate went into the Petrie Museum and measured one of their vases. So yeah, they're still trying to make them by hand, even though there's one group, I think in Russia, they try to make one by hand, and they resorted to using a potter's wheel in order to achieve the concentricity and the roundness. But I'm not sure as far as the accuracy of it.
yeah.
That's
I had been on the show a few months ago, and one of the things he describes is the cut is so great that you can shine a light inside of it and see the light.
Yeah, one of those phases, yeah. Well, I think it's one that Matt Bell has that you can shine a light, and that was another aspect to that whole research was that after Ben promoted it on his website, then that's when Matt Bell got involved and started buying up all of these pre-dynastic vases.
Yeah,
And then we did an inspection event at Danville Metal Stamping, and so Adam came in with his vases. Matt Bell came in with his.
wow.
Uh, we set them up on the rotary table and just started measuring them. I was measuring the wall thickness of them. And we were like, it was just like totally blown away by the precision of them. Imagine that using modern day tools, measuring the wall thickness. And the wall thickness of this one vase, I think it was the one that where you could actually see the light
Yeah,
shining. It was, I think it was within like no more than 2 thousandths of being a thickness all the way around it. And it was like I was just I was just floored. I was blown away by it. I mean, it's like, yeah, this is really good work.
and you got to wonder why would they cut it that thin, you know? And maybe this is where Ben gets his idea that these objects that we consider kitchen items are perhaps machine parts. So
Yeah,
knowing that,
well, I don't know. I mean, the it's always good to stretch your imagination.
yeah,
You never know.
yeah.
You can spark something in somebody else that turns into something different. Yeah, I'd say, you can't suppress human ingenuity and imagination for sure.
No, that's what makes it interesting and fun.
Right.
Hey, Chris, tell everybody where you're going to be in March. You're going to be part of a tour with my friend Mohammed Ibrahim. We'll be there April
Yeah.
28th, but you're going to be there March 6th. What's the
Fourth, I think.
March 4th?
Yeah, I think
Give us the in general. I know you don't have it in front of you, but what's the itinerary? You guys going to go look for anomalies or what's up? What are you going to do?
well, the first thing, of course, this will be the first time that the first tour I've done in a few years. I wasn't going to do any more tours, but there is a couple of things that I would like to do. I
Mhm.
definitely want to be with Filippo Biondi and Armando and Trevor when they do their presentations. and my voice to them, which I also did up in Chicago
Right.
and supported their findings. I climbed off the fence on their side, if you will, right?
Right.
So yeah, but it's got the usual. I mean, the usual tour, private accesses, the Giza Plateau, Saqqara, Dashur, the Abaruwash, hopefully, and then, down to Luxor, we'll go all the way down to a symbol, I think, in the tour. So it promises to be absolutely unbelievable, a wonderful time. The people, I think, Armando and Filippo are just incredible people.
Mhm.
Trevor is just a wonderful guy too. So, I can see that this will be an amazing trip for anybody
Yeah.
who wants to join.
Fantastic. All right, give us your
Yeah.
website again, and then what you're up to latest. I don't think there's a book in the works, but you never know. I have to ask.
Well, I guess you'll just have to be surprised.
Oh,
My website, and thank you for asking, is gizapower.com. That's GIZAPOWE, gizapower.com. And there's a lot of links in the articles section. There's some headline news on the front page. In the articles section, there's pages on the machined artifacts that we discussed today. There's an article on the stone at Abaroa, the Ramses statues. There's all kinds of photographs of those two. So have at it. Enjoy it.
yeah, I should mention that Chris is fairly good at writing articles, and he has a whole bunch of. I'm going to post an article that where he responded to inquiries about his book, Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt. So, good place to see his articles. Chris, is always a pleasure. Great to see you, and I
Great
appreciate
to
your
see you.
time.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it looks like you're getting a little gray up top there.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's okay. At least you've got a lot of it left.
All right, buddy. You take care.
Yeah, take care now. Bye.